Greetings and welcome to this 2024 IHSA Bass Fishing Preseason Rules Meeting, a first of its kind effort. My name is Kurt Gibson. I work on the administrative staff at the Illinois High School Association, and I serve as liaison to the bass fishing program. And this presentation has been created this year for coaches to give them a little insight into the upcoming season. Appreciate everybody being here today, and we hope you enjoy the presentation. As I mentioned, this is a first of its kind presentation, and it was the brainchild of the IHSA Bass Fishing Advisory Committee. When the committee met in September of 2023, they requested that IHSA staff put together this presentation. It's a very similar presentation that other sports and activities have, and it seemed to make sense to the committee that bass fishing coaches should also have a presentation. And so we hope you find this informative. So in our meeting today, you can see that we're going to talk about the season calendar. We'll discuss important materials for coaches to review. We'll spend some time looking at some slides from the IHSA website. We'll talk about a very important terms and conditions change for the upcoming season that involves rosters and lineups. And then we'll discuss the structure of the state series, which will see some changes beginning in 2025. Before we get into some of the changes, though, I would like to point out a couple of areas on the IHSA website that coaches may find useful as they try to gather and navigate the website, but gather information. And after going to IHSA.org and selecting bass fishing from the drop-down menu that will appear when you move your cursor over the Sports and Activities tab at the top of the homepage, you'll be redirected to the page you see here on the left-hand side of the screen. And on this page, there are just two areas that I want to draw some attention to right now. First, let's look at inside the green rectangle, which is at the bottom of the middle column. You'll see a green heading inside that rectangle. It says resources. And that's going to be the area for coaches to go often during the season. That's where important information that will help a coach and in planning for the season, that kind of information will be found there. You can see, a little bit past the halfway mark, there are two links for the terms and conditions, two different views that a coach could look at, as well as the manual for the current season. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but under that resources heading are important links to information a coach would want to know about. In the upper left-hand corner, in the red rectangle, are also important links, and those links will take you to state series information. It will take you to information that shows what lake or body of water your school will be assigned to for the upcoming season. As we get deeper in the season, it will have information about the state finals and the schedule and the launch order. So as well as you can see on inside that red rectangle, a listing of previous results from sectional and state final events. So green rectangle, information, important information for the current year. Red rectangle, more historical, but also contains information in terms of assignments. You'll just want to familiarize yourself with those pages at IHSA.org. I also want to point out, because sometimes folks will have questions about upcoming tournaments, high school tournaments, or how do we get a team started. We have another page, a sub-page, if you will, called The Future Fishes Here, and you can access the Future Fishes Here page by clicking on the link that you see inside that red rounded rectangle. And on that page, you can see this page will grow with related links and announcements and other information during the course of the year, but it's also a page where people find some value. Just wanted to point that out before we dive into a discussion of the season calendar. This is also available at IHSA.org, but this page shows you the important dates for the upcoming season. If we look in the 2023-24 column, you can see that the sectionals will be held this year on Thursday, May 2nd. Monday, May 6th would be a rain date, and then the state finals will be held at Carlisle Lake on Friday and Saturday, May 17th and 18th. We're going to come back to this slide later in the presentation because you can begin to see the dates change and the events that we're holding change, but we'll come back to that. This year, you can see the dates under the 23-24 column. May 2nd for the sectionals, May 17th and 18th for the state finals. Let's talk for a minute about the terms and conditions. The terms and conditions, if we wanted to provide a layman's explanation for those, serve as the rules that outline how a state series will be conducted. And it's your responsibility as a coach to read and understand these. And if you were to have questions, you could reach out to our office at the end of this presentation. I'll have a link to my name and email where you can contact me if you have questions about these. Changes to the terms and conditions are made through the advisory committee. The advisory committee meets once a year, typically at the very beginning of September. So they meet after the state finals, after the summer break, and at the beginning of the school year. The advisory committee will make recommendations for change. Then the IHSA Board of Directors would have the final say on whether any of those proposed changes are approved and enacted. Schools can submit change recommendations, I should say recommendations to the terms and conditions to the IHSA office, and we ask that those are submitted by mid-August. Committee meets at the beginning of September. Recommendations from schools come in by mid-August. That allows staff to build the agenda for the meeting. And the great thing about the terms and conditions is that they have evolved over the 15 years or so that IHSA has offered a bass fishing program. And I believe that those changes have reflected how the program has grown over that time. Let's talk about the big change for this season. Schools will now be able to adjust their lineups during the state series from the sectional to the state finals. In previous years, schools would have submitted a boat roster when they went to the sectional tournament, and only those students on one boat roster could compete as a part of that boat. If a school entered two boats and one of the boats qualified for the state finals and the other didn't, the boat that qualified for the state finals, those were the only students that could participate for their school at the state finals. There couldn't be any, in other words, substitutions or any switching out of anglers from one tournament to the next. Now schools will be able to do that. A school can still enter two boats at the sectional, but if one boat qualifies for state and the other doesn't, and for whatever reason the school wants to change the anglers to fish at the state finals, they can do that as long as what we see here in the second bullet has occurred. This will be new for coaches this year. Coaches, you will be required to complete an online roster in the IHSA School Center by April 25th. And on that roster, you'll be listing who your coaches and boat captains are and all the students on your team. That'll be the first communication from the school to the IHSA office about this group of people comprise our team. You will still complete a boat roster that you'll give to the sectional manager so that the manager knows who's fishing in the various boats at the sectional. But then you'll be able, if one boat, like I said, qualifies for the state finals and the other doesn't, you can change your boat roster for the state finals as long as the students are listed on your roster, which you'll complete by April 25th. So this, I think, is going to be a great change for coaches. It'll allow them to involve more students. It'll allow coaches to be more flexible with who fishes when. It'll allow for the differences in schedules that students have to deal with at the end of the school year. But this is a big change, and this will be something we'll just have to see how it works out overall. But I think it'll be a change that coaches will really like. One area the advisory committee wanted to make sure was discussed in this presentation was about coaches and coaching. You see down here, and I know it's not the clearest, but you see down here at the bottom of the page language directly from the terms and conditions that talk about what coaches and boat captains can do while on the water with students. And the short answer is they can do nothing. They can make suggestions, but they can't touch any equipment, with one exception. If a team only has one student in the boat and the student asks, a coach or captain can help net a fish. Other than that, coaches and boat captains can do nothing in terms of touching equipment or fishing. And we've had some instances in the past few years where coaches have violated this provision during either the sectional tournament or the state finals, and it carries serious consequences for the team. Teams will be disqualified if coaches are found fishing. So coaches, captains, when it's a sectional tournament or a state final tournament, your involvement is just what you see here, none. So the advisory committee wanted us to cover this provision from the terms and conditions as a reminder in our presentation today. Some requirements that coaches need to meet. Coaches need to complete concussion training and hate speech and harassment training. Both of these programs are in the IHSA School Center. Coaches, you'll have to be given login credentials by your school administration. Neither one of these programs takes a long time, but these are things you need to be aware of. Additionally, one of the coaches needs to be trained in CPR and AED, CPR to be able to administer CPR, I should say, and then how to use an AED. We hope that never occurs and you'd have to use that training, but it's a new requirement approved by the IHSA Board of Directors. And then I also wanted to emphasize that it's important that schools are reviewing the season calendar with boat captains to make sure they're available during the state series. Too often we found instances where schools don't talk to boat captains about when state is or where it is, and so then the schools are left to scramble if their boat qualifies from one tournament to the next. 3 other items that the advisory committee wanted to have reviewed in this presentation rather. First, team jerseys may not have sponsor logos or images on them. That's a common question that our office receives. On team jerseys, team uniforms, sponsor logos are not allowed. This is in the terms and conditions. Boats can have all the decals and recognition for sponsors that you want to put on a boat, but not on jerseys or other like headgear that's, anglers would wear. Second, it's important. We've had some instances where number 2 hasn't happened. And what we see here is that schools should only enter the state series if they can ensure that their team will participate throughout the entire state series. Now, hopefully, the change in made this year to allow for adjustment to rosters will help with this. But I think it's important to note that schools have been penalized in recent years for qualifying for the state finals and then not participating. They've been fined, they've been restricted from participating the next year. It's a very serious thing because while there is an allowance for an alternate qualifier, there's a deadline that a qualifying school needs to report that they won't participate in the state finals by, so that the alternate can be contacted. When schools just decide at the last minute to not participate, that causes these penalties to be assessed to the school. Like I said, hopefully the change made in the terms and conditions to allow for adjustment of rosters will help reduce the number of occurrences of number 2, but you need to be aware of that as a coach. And then there continues to be, it seems like every year, discussion at the advisory committee level about schools trying to bring in local experts on particular bodies of water. I think the important thing to remember is that all boat captains must be board approved before they serve in this capacity as a boat captain. So just trying to find somebody who might know a body of water pretty well and then just taking them along to that tournament is not allowed. There needs to be some planning done by schools and making sure that whoever is going to serve in the capacity of boat captain has been approved by their school board. And a school board may have some particular requirements that that person needs to meet. So these were just 3 items, again, that we wanted to touch on in this presentation. So let's talk now for a minute as we begin to close the presentation about the structure of the state series. This year, there will be 25 sectional tournaments held on May 2nd. This is the format that's been used since the IHSA Bass Fishing program has begun. There have been simply one qualifier, the sectional tournament, and then the state finals. That will continue this year. The top 3 boats, as you see here from each sectional, will qualify for the state finals. The 4th place boat will be considered the alternate qualifier from the sectional, and that boat will be given the opportunity to fish at the state finals if one of the 3 qualifiers can't participate. The assignments to the sectional tournaments are based on the proximity of schools to one another and the sectional tournament location. So in other words, geography is the prime consideration when it comes to the assignments. Coaches who have been a part of the state series before, I will tell you, you should not expect dramatic, if any, changes to your assignments this year. So taking requests, a school can make a request about now wanting to fish on a particular body of water, but that is not something that we factor into those decisions. Those decisions are based, as you see here, on this idea of geography, not only of the schools, but where they are in relation to the tournament locations. And then we would have a maximum of 75 boats competing at the state finals on May 17th and 18th at Carlisle Lake. Now, beginning in 2025, this structure is going to change based on lengthy discussions had at the advisory committee level. The advisory committee eventually made a recommendation to add another round to the tournament, and the IHSA Board of Directors approved that, and this new structure will begin in 2025. So let's look at that and talk about it for a second. I promised we'd come back to this 5-year calendar slide and image, and we've done that here. So we can see first at the bottom of the screen, when we look at the 5-year calendar, we've put inside this red rectangle what the dates of the tournaments will be beginning in 24-25. Because beginning in 24-25, a regional tournament round will be added to the state series. So the state series beginning in 2025 will have a regional tournament where boats will qualify to go to the sectional. And then from the sectional, boats will qualify to fish at the state finals. To make this work, you can see that the schedule is being adjusted. In 2025, regionals will be held in mid-May. May 15th is the date for those. The sectional will be the following week, May 22nd. And then the state finals will move into the first weekend in June. We think this new schedule will not only provide better weather for fishing, but it'll also help the state series flow. It'll also keep 2 weeks between the sectionals and the state finals to allow schools time to prepare. So we really believe this schedule will be successful. Now, when we look at the top of the slide here, we can see that when we move into this new structure, there will be 30 regional tournaments held around the state. And the top 6 boats from each of those will qualify. The goal will be to have 10 to 11, maybe 12 schools assigned to each regional tournament. So there'll be anywhere from 20 to 24 boats, and the top 6 from each regional will qualify for the sectional. At the sectional tournament, there will be 5 regionals that feed into each sectional. So there will be 30 boats participating in each sectional tournament. And of those 30 boats, the top 10 will qualify for the state finals. So the state finals will then consist of a maximum of 60 boats. 10 boats out of each of the 6 sectionals will create that number of 60. So there is a slight reduction in the number of boats that'll participate at the state finals. But again, it follows that format of other sports and activities for IHSA, in that we'll see a winnowing of the field as we start from big and work our way to the state finals. One of the big pieces of communication that came back to the advisory committee when they were proposing this model was that schools wanted another competitive opportunity, and having a regional tournament will do just that. So when we think about this season, just a reminder, some upcoming items or things to make sure you're aware of. Early March, probably by the time you watch this presentation, actually, the assignments will have been posted on IHSA.org. Remember that red rectangle on the bass fishing page. That'll take you to those assignments. By April 25th, your team roster needs to be completed in the IHSA School Center. On May 2nd, the sectional tournaments will be held. You'll be submitting boat rosters to the local manager either right before or the day of that event. May 16th is the pre-fish day for the state finals, and that's not a required event. It's just an optional event. Get you familiar with Carlisle Lake if you're not familiar with it. And then the finals are on May 17th and 18th. That's a Friday and Saturday, like I said, at Carlisle Lake in Carlisle, Illinois. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this first preseason rules meeting for bass fishing coaches. If you need to reach me, you can contact me, Kurt Gibson, the IHSA office, at the email address you see there. Thanks again. Best wishes to everyone for a great season.